Florida Realtors has released its monthly housing market statistics for February, and they show that closed home sales were up year over year for the sixth straight month, while median prices remained close to where they were a year ago. After rising by almost 6% year over year in January, closed sales of single-family homes followed up in February by rising nearly 4%. As I mentioned already, that's the sixth consecutive month where we've had a year-over-year increase in closed sales at the statewide level. More locally, closings were up in 16 of Florida's 22 metro areas. Florida condo and townhouse sales were also up for the sixth consecutive month on a year-over-year basis. On the heels of January's more than 5% increase, February closings in this property type category jumped by more than 8.5%, more than twice the increase we saw for single-family homes. And yet, if we drill down by metro area, only half of Florida's metros saw an increase in condo and townhouse closings compared to a year ago. The reason the statewide increase was still strong, however, is because of very robust growth in condo and townhouse sales in Southwest Florida. While closed sales growth was fairly similar in February compared to January, that was not the case for the number of homes coming onto the market. New listings of single-family homes in February were significantly lower than they were in January. While it's common for new listings to be lower in February than January, this year's drop was unusually large. And if we compare February's new listings to those 1 year ago, they were down 9.5%. By historical standards, though, February's new listings were not low. It's more a case of new listings last year at this time being unusually high. The number of new listings in February was actually quite similar to what we saw in February of 2019 and 2020 ahead of the pandemic, and slightly higher than what we saw in February of 2021 and 2022 during the ensuing boom market. The same thing happened with condo and townhouse new listings in February. In January, we had more new listings in this property type category than we've recorded for any month, going back to when our data series starts in 2008. But in February, we returned to more normal levels. On a year-over-year basis, this was a decline of over 15%, but very much in line with the number of new listings we had each February from 2019 through 2022. So while we started out with a high number of new listings in January this year, just like we did last year, this year is different based on the February data. Instead of continuing to see a high level of new listings, we dropped back to what would be considered a more normal level of new listings. The data on new pending sales also looked a bit different in February than it did in January. New pending sales of single-family homes were up by over 15% in January compared to a year ago, but in February, they were only up by 4%. Similarly, there was strong year-over-year growth in new contracts for condos and townhouses in January, close to 17%, but this fell back in February to a little over 9%. In last month's video about the January statistics, we speculated that it's possible new listings and new pending sales could stay somewhat elevated if enough sellers were motivated enough to maintain that trend, but that now looks unlikely given the February data. We can chalk the January results up to a certain share of sellers being ultra motivated and pouncing as soon as the calendar changed to the new year, but a couple of months into 2026, it looks like we're in for a more normal level of listings coming onto the market with slightly improved numbers of sales rather than a much higher level of both going into the spring. This is still progress for the market, which has at the very least bottomed out in terms of sales and is inching its way back upward. This also likely spells the end of our upward inventory surge that we've experienced since the beginning of 2022. End-of-month inventory of single-family homes was down more than 7.5% in February, putting us relatively close to the same level of homes that were on the market at this time in 2019. The last time single-family inventory was down year over year was back in July of 2023, and that month it was only down just barely. Prior to that, you'd have to go all the way back to March of 2022, when mortgage rates had only just started rising. At the local level, inventory levels were down year over year in 16 of the 22 metros, including several metros that had seen the most inventory growth over the last 3 years. The statewide inventory of condos and townhouses was also down by a little over 7.5% in February compared to a year ago, falling for the first time since May of 2022. Locally, there was a decline in 17 of the 22 metro areas in the state. With inventory levels appearing to have stopped growing on a year-over-year basis for now, that will shore up current price trends, and that's what we continue to see in the median sale price data. Looking at closed sales of Florida single-family homes in February, the median price was down by less than 1% to $412,000 compared to February 2025. And over in the condo and townhouse category, the median price fell by a little under 2% to $309,000. Well, those are the stats for this month. If you're interested in seeing how your local market fared, you can always visit floridarealtors.org, where Florida Realtors members have access to our interactive web application, SunStats. In SunStats, you can compare and analyze the market in any municipality or zip code within the state, as well as that of every county and metro area. As we showed, not every market saw an increase in sales or a decline in inventory. Is your market one of them? We'll see you next month with the March statistics.